Levitation, levitation photography, levitation. Make it look like you're flying or floating. Levitation, levitation photography with Jen Joy and the State of Joy. Learn how to flip, fly, or float using a couple of simple props and a couple of simple techniques. Make your photos look amazing by flipping, flying, or floating people or yourself in your photos. Levitation, levitation, levitation in your photography. Yeah. All right, let's talk about levitation photography. Well, what exactly is levitation photography? Well, it's a process of photography where the model can look as if they are flipping, flying, or floating in the camera, as demonstrated by the fountain flip right here and the magic carpet ride float right here. So the levitation process requires a few things. It requires a setting, a stool or some kind of prop, and a tripod. Pretty much that's it. But the details of how to actually execute a proper levitation so that we get the sense that the illusion is happening means we have to do far more brain work in advance and also think to see what we don't see while we're actually on site. So one of the first things we think about in levitation is our location. Location is everything. What we're ultimately looking for is some type of vantage point or some type of like horizon to be above. In the fountain flip, it works because I was able to lift myself high enough above the base of the fountain by getting my stool closer and adjusting the tripod. Because what's tricky is sometimes when you do levitation, it can look as if you're just laying on the thing behind you. So, for example, if you were to do levitation in front of a staircase, like one of those long ones that goes up a museum or something like that, it's like a long staircase. If you were to do that with the person levitating, they would actually look like they were just laying on the stairs. So what we really want is some type of horizon so that we can put the subject above the horizon. That worked well in the magic carpet ride, not because there was a horizon, but because there was an obvious base of a river water, and then I'm floating above the river water. So that's something to think of, is the vantage point and the perspective so that you can make sure that your subject looks as if it's above something. For example, if I was to levitate right here, it would look as if I was just laying a little bit above the couch. But if I was levitating right here, you can see the horizon right there and how the subject would be a little higher up. So that is a way of explaining the vantage point for levitation. So this is the process of how a levitation would work. You get to your location and you've got your supplies. You want to, let's say you've already done your test shots and you figure things out, and now it's time for action. What you want to do is, okay, you already had your test shot, right? Where you had your model and your stool in there and you took the test shot and you're like, okay, vantage point looks good, lighting looks good, my tripod is solid, that's good. And so then after that, it's time to shoot. So take everything out of the scene. I know, you just put it there and placed it and everything, but take it out, take a blank shot, get back in, execute, 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 hop out real fast and get that blank shot. So in editing, it looks like blank, post, 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 blank. When you're doing things outside, especially levitation, any type of differentiation, let's try that one again. Any type of change in the light will show differentiation in the editing. So you want to make sure that your blank shot is as close to the natural light as your posing shot. You'll see what I mean when you actually go into the editing. A lot of this I learned through trial and error because I would go out and I'd do something, I'd capture it, and then I'd bring it back to the editing thing. I'd hit that pop button, and then I'd see it didn't work, and I was like, oh my God. So, get blank shots as often as you can, close to the shot that you think that you're going to use, because then the lighting on the ground and the lighting on the model and the lighting on your background is going to be as accurate. The more editing that we do, it actually changes the way that we can perceive the picture, and it doesn't have that pop. So really what you're aiming for as a photographer is all you really want to do is just mask that thing out. That's all. You just want to mask out the stool. You don't really want to have to do a lot of other editing because it changes the way that the viewer will perceive the optical illusion. Okay, so there's that. Other things to think about while levitating. I'd say attire is fairly important. With our attire, we would like to have something that's flowing so that you can add a little bit of motion to the frame, and also so that flow can help protect whatever they're sitting on, so that you don't have to mask out the whole stool. What's tough is since they're on the stool, their butt's gonna look flat, right? But if you take that stool out, then you got a flat butt. But then you try to get your push thing and you try to push that butt out or whatever, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So you want to have some type of drape that goes on the model and over the stool in order to be able to mask out the stool around it and then leave the fabric there. The other thing about attire is it would be great to have some kind of flowing motion so that you can make it look as if she's flying, flipping, or floating by adding a little poof to the dress. A note on levitation. There is some amazing levitation photographers and digital artists out there, and they actually do their styles in all sorts of different ways. My personal style is to actually execute the real levitation live on the scene with minimal editing. So that means that me as the model and as the photographer, there's a lot more going on. We've really got to get that pose. We've got to get that lift. We've got to get that motion. We got to get that interaction. We got to get that expression. We got to get the light. And everything needs to be executed all at the same time in the same shoot, which means it's amazing and also difficult, and you've really got to think it through. Some other photographers that I really admire do a lot more post-editing where they can make themselves look like they're coming out of little tiny teacups, or standing on a big cherry, or floating in the sky with their toes pointed, which is amazing because obviously if you're standing on something you can't actually point both toes. What I've discovered in their editing process is they actually did standing poses in a studio and then juxtaposed that onto the setting, which I think is a really great idea. And that is definitely a way that you can levitate. And if you'd like to levitate that way, I'd recommend you check out their programs. Because here, we're going to be doing live levitation like it's a performance in the moment. All right, that's my little tip for that. All right, in the next series, we're going to talk about dun dun dun, the editing process, which is super fun. It is. What you'll need is an editing software. I personally use Affinity Pro on my iPad because I like doing things with my little Apple pen, or whatever pen you might have. But basically, tablet and pen is the way that I like to do it. And you'll need your camera and your footage, and then you'll need to drop in your footage into your device, and then we will open up our editing software and I will show you the magic of levitation so that you too can create flipping, flying, and floating photos for your portfolio as a model or a photographer. All right, let's move on to the next part, shall we?